The plane climbed to 30,000 feet when both pilots suddenly collapsed. No one on board knew how to fly. Panic spread through the cabin. Then, a small voice spoke up from the back. An 11-year-old girl stood up and said, "I can help." Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. The morning sky over Denver was painted in shades of pink and orange as Flight 237 prepared for takeoff. Inside the busy terminal, passengers rushed to their gates, pulling suitcases and clutching coffee cups. Among them was an 11-year-old girl named Emma Williams, traveling alone for the first time in her life. Emma had short brown hair tied in a ponytail and wore a blue jacket with her favorite cartoon character on it. Her backpack was filled with books, snacks, and a small notebook where she wrote stories. She was nervous but also excited. Her parents had put her on this flight to visit her grandmother in Chicago, and the flight attendants had given her a special badge that said, "Unaccompanied Minor." As she walked down the jet bridge toward the plane, Emma felt her heart beating fast. She had flown before, but always with her mom or dad. This time, she was on her own. A kind flight attendant named Lisa greeted her at the door. "Welcome aboard, Emma," Lisa said with a warm smile. "Your seat is in row 12, right by the window. I'll check on you during the flight, okay?" Emma nodded and made her way down the narrow aisle. She found her seat and settled in, pressing her face against the window to watch the ground crew loading luggage. Other passengers filed in, businessmen in suits, families with young children, an elderly couple holding hands, and a group of college students laughing about their spring break plans. In the cockpit, Captain James Morrison and his co-pilot, First Officer Sarah Chen, were going through their pre-flight checks. Captain Morrison was a veteran pilot with over 20 years of experience. He had flown through storms, dealt with mechanical issues, and always brought his passengers safely to their destinations. Sarah was younger but highly skilled, having joined the airline 3 years ago after serving in the Air Force. "All systems looking good," Sarah said, scanning the instruments. "Perfect," Captain Morrison replied. "Let's have a smooth flight to Chicago." At exactly 8 in the morning, Flight 237 began rolling down the runway. Emma gripped her armrests as the engines roared to life. The plane picked up speed, faster and faster, until suddenly she felt that magical moment when the wheels left the ground. They were flying. She watched Denver grow smaller below her, the buildings turning into tiny boxes and the cars into moving dots. The Rocky Mountains stretched out in the distance, their peaks still covered with snow. Emma opened her notebook and began writing about what she saw. The flight was supposed to take about 2.5 hours. Lisa came by with a cart offering drinks and snacks. Emma chose apple juice and a package of cookies. Around her, passengers settled into their routines, some read books, others watched movies on their phones, and a few tried to sleep. Everything seemed normal. Everything seemed safe. But 30 minutes into the flight, when they reached 30,000 feet, something went terribly wrong. In the cockpit, Captain Morrison suddenly felt dizzy. His vision blurred and his head began to pound. He blinked hard, trying to focus on the instruments in front of him. "Sarah, I don't feel well," he managed to say. Sarah turned to look at him, concern flashing across her face. "Captain? What's wrong?" Before he could answer, Captain Morrison slumped forward in his seat, unconscious. His hands fell away from the controls. "Captain Morrison!" Sarah shouted. She immediately pressed the button to call for help. "We have a medical emergency in the cockpit. I need assistance right now." Sarah took full control of the plane, her training kicking in automatically. But within seconds, she began feeling the same symptoms: dizziness, nausea, a strange heaviness in her limbs. Something was very wrong. "No, no, no," she whispered, fighting to stay alert. But the feeling grew stronger. Her hands trembled on the controls. She managed to turn on the autopilot before she too lost consciousness, her head falling back against her seat. The plane continued flying straight and level on autopilot, but in the cockpit, both pilots were unconscious. Nobody was flying the plane. Lisa rushed to the cockpit door after receiving Sarah's distress call. She knocked hard. "Captain Morrison." "First Officer Chen." No response. She used her key to unlock the door and gasped at what she saw. Both pilots were slumped in their seats, unresponsive. Her training told her to stay calm, but fear gripped her heart. She ran back into the cabin, where another flight attendant named Marcus was serving drinks. "Both pilots are unconscious," she whispered urgently. "We need to find someone who can help fly this plane." Marcus's eyes went wide. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious. Make an announcement. Ask if anyone has flight experience. Quickly." Marcus grabbed the intercom with shaking hands. His voice tried to sound calm, but everyone could hear the strain in it. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is a very important announcement. We have a medical situation in the cockpit, and we need anyone with flight experience to please identify themselves immediately. If you have any aviation background at all, we need you to come to the front of the plane right now." The cabin went silent. Passengers looked at each other with growing fear. Parents pulled their children closer. A baby started crying. Nervous whispers spread through the plane like wildfire. "What's happening?" someone asked. "Are we in danger?" another voice called out. Seconds passed. Nobody came forward. Marcus made the announcement again, his voice more desperate this time. "Please, if anyone has any experience with aircraft, we urgently need your help." Still, nobody moved. Lisa's heart sank. What were they going to do? She knew they had maybe 30 minutes before the autopilot would need adjustment. After that, they would need to begin their descent to Chicago. Without a pilot, they couldn't land. Without landing, they would run out of fuel and crash. Emma had heard everything. She sat frozen in her seat, her cookies forgotten on her tray table. The plane was in trouble. Real trouble. And nobody could help. She thought about her parents. She thought about her grandmother waiting for her in Chicago. She thought about all the people on this plane, the families, the children, the elderly couple who had smiled at her when they boarded. Then Emma thought about something else. Her dad. Emma's father, David Williams, was a flight instructor. He had taught people how to fly small planes for 15 years. Emma had spent countless hours at the small airport where he worked, sitting in the co-pilot seat of training aircraft while he taught his students. She had watched him demonstrate controls, listened to him explain how airplanes worked, and had even taken the controls herself during some of those lessons. "Flying is just like riding a bike, Emma," her dad always said. "Scary at first, but once you understand the basics, it becomes natural. You just have to stay calm and remember what you learned." Of course, Emma had only flown small single-engine planes, and only with her dad right beside her. She had never flown alone. She had never flown a commercial jet. She didn't even have a pilot's license, she was only 11 years old. But she knew more about flying than anyone else on this plane. Emma's hands trembled as she unbuckled her seatbelt. She stood up on shaky legs. Around her, passengers were panicking now, some crying, others praying. She walked toward the front of the plane, each step feeling heavy. Lisa saw her coming. "Sweetie, please go back to your seat. Everything will be okay." "I know how to fly," Emma said quietly. Lisa barely heard her over the noise of frightened passengers. "What?" "I know how to fly," Emma repeated, louder this time. "My dad is a flight instructor. I've flown planes before. Small ones. He taught me." Lisa stared at her, this small 11-year-old girl with a ponytail and a cartoon character on her jacket. This couldn't be serious. This couldn't be happening. "Honey, I don't think." "There's nobody else," Emma interrupted. "I heard the announcement. Nobody else knows how to fly. But I do. My dad taught me. I've taken off and landed before. I know the controls. Marcus joined them. Lisa, we're running out of time. Air traffic control is trying to reach the cockpit and we're not responding. If we don't do something soon. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Lisa looked at Emma, then at Marcus, then back at Emma. Every instinct told her this was crazy. But what other choice did they have? They could radio for help from the ground, but even with expert guidance, someone needed to be in the cockpit actually flying the plane. Okay, Lisa said, making the hardest decision of her life. Okay, Emma. Come with me. They went to the cockpit. Emma's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst out of her chest. When she saw the two pilots unconscious in their seats, reality hit her like a wave. This was real. This was actually happening. We need to move them, Marcus said. He and another male passenger carefully lifted Captain Morrison out of his seat and carried him to the first-class cabin, where they laid him flat and began checking his vital signs. They did the same with Sarah. Both pilots were breathing but completely unresponsive. Emma stood at the entrance to the cockpit, staring at all the instruments, screens, buttons, and switches. There were hundreds of them. The small training planes she'd flown had maybe 20 instruments. This was overwhelming. But then she took a deep breath and remembered her dad's words. Start with what you know, Emma. Ignore everything else. Find the horizon, check your speed, watch your altitude. The basics keep you alive. She climbed into the captain's seat. Her feet barely reached the pedals. She had to adjust the seat forward. Her hands found the control yoke, the steering wheel of the plane. It felt different from the small planes, heavier, but the basic principle was the same. Lisa had gotten on the radio to air traffic control. This is Flight 237. We have an emergency situation. Both pilots are incapacitated. We have an 11-year-old passenger with some flight training who is attempting to fly the aircraft. There was a long pause from the radio. Then a voice came through, shocked but trying to stay professional. Flight 237, please repeat. Did you say 11 years old? Affirmative. She's the only person on board with any flight experience. Another pause. Emma could imagine the chaos this was causing on the ground. Finally, the voice came back. Flight 237, we are connecting you with our most experienced pilot instructor. His name is Jack Reynolds. He's going to talk you through this. Stay calm. We're going to get everyone home safely. A new voice came over the radio, calm and confident. Hello, Flight 237. This is Jack Reynolds. I'm a senior training captain. Can I speak with the person at the controls? Emma picked up the radio microphone with shaking hands. This is Emma Williams. I'm 11. My dad is a flight instructor. I've flown Cessna 172s and Piper Cherokees. I know basic controls and I've done takeoffs and landings, but always with my dad helping me. Emma, Jack said, his voice steady and reassuring, you are very brave. I'm going to help you through every single step. First, I need you to check your autopilot. It should be engaged right now. Can you find the autopilot panel? Emma scanned the instruments. She found it, a panel with buttons and lights showing AP and Alt hold. Yes, I see it. It says autopilot is on and altitude hold is on. Perfect. That means the plane is flying itself right now. You don't need to do anything immediately. We have time to go through everything step by step. First, tell me what you see on your instruments. What's your altitude? Emma looked at the altimeter. 30,000 feet. Good. What's your speed? She found the airspeed indicator. It says 420 knots. Excellent. You're doing great, Emma. Now, the plane is going to need to descend soon and eventually land. We're going to prepare you for that. But right now, I want you to just get comfortable with where everything is. Can you identify your heading indicator? Emma searched and found it. Yes. We're heading 090 degrees. East. Perfect. Now find your vertical speed indicator. That shows if you're climbing or descending. Found it. It shows 0. We're level. You're doing wonderfully, Emma. You're already thinking like a pilot. Now, here's what's going to happen. We're going to guide you to O'Hare International Airport in Chicago. It's a big airport with long runways and emergency services ready. You're going to land this plane. Emma's stomach dropped. I don't know if I can land something this big. You can, Jack said firmly. I've trained hundreds of pilots, and you know what? The basic principles are exactly the same whether it's a little Cessna or a big jet like you're in. The jet is actually easier in some ways because it has more automation. I'm going to be with you every second. When I tell you to do something, you do it, and everything will be fine. Trust me, Emma. Can you do that? Emma thought about her dad. She thought about all those hours in the cockpit with him. She thought about the first time she landed a plane successfully, how scared she was, and how proud her dad looked afterward. Yes, she said. I can do it. That's my girl. Now, let's get to work. For the next hour, Jack walked Emma through every instrument in the cockpit. He explained what each one did and which ones she needed to pay attention to. He taught her how the autopilot worked and how to disengage it when the time came. He explained the throttle controls that managed engine power. In the cabin behind her, Lisa and Marcus tried to keep passengers calm. Word had spread that an 11-year-old was flying the plane. Some passengers were praying. Others were crying. A few refused to believe it was really happening. One businessman stood up angrily. This is insane. A child cannot fly this plane. We need to turn back immediately. Marcus blocked his way. Sir, please sit down. There is no other option. Both our pilots are unconscious. Emma is our only chance. Air traffic control is guiding her. The best thing you can do is stay calm and let her concentrate. We're all going to die, a woman sobbed. An elderly man stood up. He had been quiet the whole flight, but now he spoke with authority. Everyone, listen to me. My name is Robert Chen. I flew in the Air Force for 25 years. I'm too old now and my hands shake too much to fly this plane, but I've been listening to what that girl is doing, and I can tell you something, she's doing everything right. She's calm, she's following instructions, and she has training. We have a real chance here. But only if we stay calm and let her focus. So everyone, please, sit down and be quiet. His words seemed to help. The cabin grew quieter. People returned to their seats. Some held hands with strangers. Others stared out windows. All they could do was wait. In the cockpit, Emma was learning how to control the descent. When we start going down, Jack explained, you're going to reduce power slowly. Just pull these throttle levers back a tiny bit at a time. The plane will begin descending. Use the autopilot to set your vertical speed. You want to go down about 1,000 feet per minute. Not too fast. Okay, Emma said, trying to memorize every word. The hardest part will be the landing itself, Jack continued. But we're going to practice this in your mind first. I want you to imagine it. The plane comes in low over the runway. You're flying steady. At the last moment, you pull back gently on the yoke to lift the nose slightly. The rear wheels touch down first, then the front wheel. After you're on the ground, you pull these levers right here, those are the thrust reversers. They slow you down. Then you use the brakes. Just like driving a car, but with your feet. Emma nodded, visualizing each step. "We're going to start your descent now," Jack said. "Are you ready?" "Ready," Emma replied, though her palms were sweating. "Okay. First, disengage the altitude hold on the autopilot. Press that button right there." Emma pressed it. The plane stopped maintaining its altitude. "Now, gently pull back the throttle levers." "Just a little bit." Emma gripped the throttle levers and pulled them back slightly. The engine sound changed from a roar to a lower hum. The nose of the plane dipped slightly downward. "Check your vertical speed indicator," Jack said. "We're descending at 900 feet per minute, Emma reported. "Perfect. You're a natural, Emma. Now just hold steady. Keep the wings level. Watch your horizon indicator, that shows if you're banking left or right. Keep it centered." For the next 20 minutes, Emma flew the plane downward through the sky. 29,000 feet. 25,000. 20,000. The plane cut through clouds. Emma's arms ached from holding the yoke steady, but she didn't complain. On the ground at O'Hare Airport, emergency vehicles lined up along the runway, fire trucks, ambulances, police cars. News helicopters hovered at a distance. The story had already broken on television. Around the country, millions of people watched live coverage of Flight 237's approach. At a small airport in Denver, Emma's father David was teaching a lesson when someone ran in shouting about the news. David looked at the television screen and saw his daughter's flight number. His heart stopped. "That's my daughter's plane," he whispered. Within minutes, he was on the phone with air traffic control. "My daughter is on that plane. Emma Williams. She's the one flying it, isn't she? Let me talk to her." They connected him to the radio. "Emma, sweetheart, it's Dad. I'm here." Emma's eyes filled with tears when she heard his voice. "Dad. I'm so scared." "I know, baby. But you can do this. Remember everything I taught you. Remember that perfect landing you made in the Cessna? This is the same thing, just bigger. Trust your training. Trust yourself. I'm so proud of you." "I don't want to let everyone down," Emma said, her voice breaking. "You won't. You're the bravest person I know. Now listen to Jack. Do exactly what he tells you. And know that your mom and I love you more than anything in the world. I love you too, Dad. You've got this, Emma. Bring everyone home." Emma wiped her tears and gripped the controls tighter. Jack's voice returned. "Emma, we're at 10,000 feet now. You're doing beautifully. In about 5 minutes, we're going to be able to see the airport. I need you to start turning to line up with the runway. I'm going to tell you which direction to turn. Remember how to use the yoke. Turn it like a car's steering wheel, but gently." "I remember," Emma said. "Okay, turn right. Very gently. Turn the yoke to the right about 20 degrees. Emma turned the yoke. The plane banked right, turning in the sky. She watched the heading indicator change. "Good. Now level the wings. Center the yoke." She centered it. The plane straightened out. "Perfect. Emma, you're flying this plane better than some pilots I've trained for months. You have natural talent." Despite her fear, Emma felt a small flicker of pride. They continued descending. 7,000 feet. 5,000 feet. Through a break in the clouds, Emma saw the ground below, buildings, roads, and then, straight ahead, the long strips of the airport runways. "I see the airport," she called out. "That's it, Emma. You're lined up perfectly with runway 28 right. It's the long one straight ahead. Now we're going to go through the landing checklist. First, landing gear. Find the lever that looks like a wheel." Emma found it. "Got it. Put it down. Push it forward. She pushed it. There was a clunking sound beneath the plane as the landing gear extended and locked into place. Landing gear shows 3 green lights. Jack asked. Yes. 3 green lights. Excellent. That means all 3 wheels are down and locked. Now reduce your speed more. Pull the throttle back more. Emma pulled the throttle back. The plane slowed down. 2,000 feet altitude. The ground was coming up fast. Flaps, Jack said. Find the flap lever. It should be marked. You need to extend flaps to 30 degrees. Emma's hands scrambled over the controls. She found the flap lever and moved it to 30 degrees. The plane's nose dipped slightly as the flaps extended from the wings, giving more lift and drag. Airspeed? Jack asked. 140 knots. Perfect. You're going to cross the runway threshold at about 130 knots. Keep reducing speed slowly. 1,000 feet. 500 feet. Emma could see the runway clearly now, the white markings, the lights along the edges. It looked so thin, like a ribbon. How would she ever land on something that narrow? Stay focused, Emma, Jack's voice said calmly. You're doing everything right. Keep the runway centered in front of you. Make small corrections with the yoke if you need to. 300 feet. 200 feet. Emma's heart hammered in her chest. The ground rushed up toward them. Remember, Emma, Jack said. When you're about 20 feet above the runway, pull back gently on the yoke. Lift the nose slightly. We call it the flare. The plane will settle down softly. 100 feet. 50 feet. Emma could see individual cars in the parking lot now. Flare, Emma. Pull back. Gently. Emma pulled back on the yoke. The plane's nose lifted slightly. And then, with a screech of rubber on concrete, the rear wheels touched down. The plane bounced slightly, then settled. The front wheel came down. They were on the ground. Emma had landed the plane. Thrust reversers, Emma. Pull those levers up. Now. Emma pulled the thrust reversers. The engines roared in reverse, slowing the massive plane down. She pressed the brake pedals with her feet, just like her dad had taught her. The plane slowed, slowed, slowed. It was still moving fast, but the speed was decreasing. 60 knots. 40 knots. 20 knots. 10. The plane rolled to a stop in the middle of the runway. Emma sat in the pilot's seat, shaking all over. She had done it. She had really done it. Behind her, the entire cabin erupted in cheers, screams of joy, and tears of relief. People hugged each other, strangers celebrating together. Lisa ran into the cockpit and wrapped Emma in a tight hug. You did it. You saved us all. Emergency vehicles surrounded the plane. Paramedics rushed aboard to attend to the unconscious pilots. Captain Morrison and First Officer Sarah were taken to the hospital. Medical investigators later discovered they had been poisoned by contaminated food they ate before the flight. They would both recover fully. The passengers evacuated down emergency slides, grateful to be alive. Emma was the last to leave the plane. When she appeared at the door, the crowd of emergency responders, airport personnel, and news crews broke into applause. Her father was there, having caught the fastest flight to Chicago. He ran to her and scooped her up in his arms, tears streaming down his face. I'm so proud of you, he sobbed. You're a hero, Emma. A real hero. Emma buried her face in her father's shoulder and finally let herself cry, not from fear anymore, but from relief. It was over. Everyone was safe. The story of Flight 237 spread around the world. News channels played the audio recordings of Emma's calm communications with air traffic control. Aviation experts called it a miracle. The airline offered Emma and her family a lifetime of free flights. But more importantly, new safety protocols were put in place. Airlines began carrying portable automated systems that could help passengers land planes in extreme emergencies. Flight attendants received additional training. And regulations were changed to require 3 crew members in the cockpit for longer flights. Emma returned home to Denver a hero. Her school threw her a massive celebration. She was invited to meet the governor, the president, and famous pilots from around the world. But the moment she treasured most was when the Aviation Safety Foundation awarded her an honorary pilot's license and her dad framed it on the wall of their home. "I knew you could do it," her dad said that night as he tucked her into bed. "You know why? Because you stayed calm. You remembered your training. And most of all, you didn't give up even when you were terrified." "I was really, really scared, Dad," Emma admitted. Brave people aren't people who aren't scared. Brave people are the ones who do the right thing even when they're terrified. That's you, Emma. You're the bravest person I know. Emma smiled and closed her eyes. As she drifted off to sleep, she thought about Flight 237. She thought about all those people whose lives she had saved. She thought about how one moment of courage had changed everything. Years later, when Emma turned 18, she enrolled in aviation school. She earned her commercial pilot's license and eventually became a captain for a major airline. She flew hundreds of thousands of passengers safely to their destinations. But she never forgot that day at 30,000 feet when the plane went silent and everything changed. She never forgot the fear, the responsibility, and the incredible feeling of bringing everyone home safe. On the anniversary of Flight 237, Emma would visit the Aviation Museum where they had preserved the cockpit of that plane. She would sit in the captain's seat, now too small for her adult frame, and remember when she was just an 11-year-old girl with a ponytail and a cartoon jacket. She would remember the most important lesson her father ever taught her, that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's flying even when you're afraid. And every time Emma took off in her own plane as captain, she would think of those passengers who trusted an 11-year-old girl with their lives. She would think of Jack Reynolds's calm voice guiding her through the impossible. She would think of her father's words, "You've got this, Emma. Bring everyone home." And she did. Every single time. The sky was no longer something that frightened her. It was where she belonged. It was where she had discovered her courage. It was where she had learned that sometimes the impossible is just another word for what we haven't tried yet. Flight 237 became a legend in aviation history. Books were written about it. Movies were made. But for Emma, it was simply the day she learned who she really was, not just a scared little girl on a plane, but a pilot who could do anything she set her mind to. The plane had gone silent at 30,000 feet. But Emma Williams had made sure that everyone heard her message loud and clear: never underestimate what people can do when they refuse to give up. And somewhere in the sky, on every flight she captained, Emma carried that message with her. She carried the memory of those passengers who believed in her. She carried the voice of her father telling her she was brave. She carried the knowledge that she had faced the impossible and won. The story of Flight 237 ended with everyone safe on the ground. But Emma's story? That was just beginning. The sky was calling her. And she had finally learned how to answer. 10 years after that fateful day, Emma stood in the crew briefing room of a major airline, wearing her captain's uniform with 4 gold stripes on her shoulders. At 21, she was the youngest commercial airline captain in history. The co-pilot assigned to her flight looked nervous. "Captain Williams," he said respectfully, "it's an honor to fly with you. I've read about Flight 237 1,000 times in training." Emma smiled warmly. "Please, call me Emma. And don't worry, today's flight will be much quieter than that one." As she walked through the terminal toward her gate, passengers recognized her. Some asked for photographs. Others simply nodded with respect. A little girl, about the same age Emma had been that day, tugged on her mother's sleeve and pointed. "Mommy, is that the pilot who saved all those people? Emma knelt down to the girl's level. Hi there. What's your name? Sophie, the girl whispered shyly. Sophie, do you like airplanes? The girl nodded eagerly. You know what I learned when I was your age? Emma said softly. I learned that being scared is okay. Everyone gets scared sometimes. But the important thing is what you do when you're scared. You can let fear stop you, or you can be brave and do what needs to be done. Sophie's eyes grew wide with wonder. Were you scared that day? When you flew the plane? I was terrified, Emma admitted honestly. But I had people helping me. My dad, the people on the radio, and most importantly, I had training. That's why learning is so important. You never know when you might need to do something incredible. The little girl hugged Emma suddenly. When I grow up, I want to be just like you. Emma hugged her back, blinking away tears. Then you will be amazing. As Emma boarded her flight and settled into the captain's seat, she looked at all the instruments that had once seemed so overwhelming. Now they were familiar friends. She ran through her pre-flight checklist with ease, her hands moving confidently over the controls. Her co-pilot completed his checks. Ready when you are, Captain. Emma picked up the intercom. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain speaking. Welcome aboard. We're expecting smooth skies today, and we'll have you at your destination right on time. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight. As the plane taxied toward the runway, Emma thought about all the passengers behind her, people going home to their families, starting new adventures, pursuing their dreams. Each one trusted her to keep them safe. It was a responsibility she never took lightly. The tower gave clearance for takeoff. Emma pushed the throttle forward, and the engines roared to life. The plane accelerated down the runway, faster and faster, until that magical moment when the wheels left the ground. They were flying. Emma glanced out the cockpit window at the endless blue sky stretching before her. Somewhere out there, her father was probably teaching another student, passing on the same lessons he had taught her. Somewhere, Jack Reynolds was guiding another pilot through a difficult situation. Somewhere, the passengers of Flight 237 were living their lives, grateful for each day. And here she was, doing what she loved most, bringing people safely through the sky. The scared 11-year-old girl with a ponytail was gone. In her place was a confident captain who had learned the most important lesson of all, that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when circumstances demand it. As the plane climbed higher, Emma smiled. The sky was no longer a place of fear. It was home. And she knew, without a doubt, that she was exactly where she was meant to be, carrying forward the legacy of that one incredible day when everything changed at 30,000 feet.